There's a line between letting your anxiety rule you and you not doing things because it is better for your mental health in general. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. We are back for video 2 in the series of opening up about my anxiety, depression, and OCD. If you missed the first video, I'd recommend watching that first. I will link it in the description box down below. So pause this, watch that first. I feel like it would just make everything more sense, but make sure you come back to this video to see part 2. I also want to share the same disclaimer that I shared in the previous video, that mental health is a real issue, and I strongly urge you guys to talk to your doctor and also talk to someone in your personal life, because you do not need to go through this alone. Also, once again, did I say my name is Hannah? Feel free to stick around and subscribe. I'm just ready to get right into the video. I just finished typing up my notes. Also, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Once again, I typed up my notes and I have them over here, so if I'm looking over here, that's why. So I am going to pick up where I left off in the previous video with my incoming freshman year of college. One of my OCD struggles I had at the time, because as I mentioned, I had multiple irrational compulsions. I went through a phase of not stepping on cracks in the sidewalks and also following directions to a T. That summer I had a job where I would take microwave lunches, and I would have microwave lunch for the meal, like for lunch or something like that. And I would have to follow the exact amount of, not the exact amount I would have to follow the directions exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. So like it said, heat for 1 minute, 45 seconds. Like that's like a good, suggestion. Obviously they know what they're talking about, but I felt like I had to follow the directions for whatever reason. I know it doesn't make sense. Once again, I know this sounds absurd, as I was saying, but I couldn't just not perform the compulsion. If you have OCD, you feel like you have to go through with it. Once again, the book helped me a lot. I will refer to that in a second, and I will have it linked for you guys in below. I did link it in the previous video as well. This is the book that I was talking about. It is called Brain Lock: Free Yourself from Obsessive Compulsive Behavior. It will be the first link in the description box down below, so you guys can definitely check it out. I really recommend this. This book has helped me a lot with my OCD. If you or someone you know is having problems with OCD, I really recommend this book. It has coping mechanisms as well as stories of other people with OCD, so you don't feel alone. So I followed a lot of what that book suggested. Also, a big help was talking to my dad about my different compulsions that I was struggling with. I talked with both of my parents, but I remember he was a specific help with this. Also, another thing that I would really like to thank my parents about, I feel like they did a lot of research and really just tried to help me the best that they could. So I can't thank them enough for that. Couldn't have gotten through this without them. So I would tell him about my compulsions, and he would remind me that it was just OCD and everything would be okay. I know that may sound like it's silly, but if it was just left up to me, I would just keep on giving into the compulsions, which just makes the situation worse. At the time, if you feel like you absolutely have to perform the compulsion, but once you do, you get the desire, or however you want to say this, you feel like you have to perform the compulsion again, and it's harder to say no the more you get into the compulsion, obviously. The beginning of my college career was a struggle because it was obviously an adjustment, so that did not make my OCD or anxiety by any means. At this point, I don't really think that I struggled with depression as much. I obviously did feel overwhelmed at times, but I still wanted to include this in the title because I didn't necessarily go away. I will discuss it more in the next video because I did kind of go through a state of depression again after college. So as I was saying, I did obviously feel overwhelmed, but I mostly dealt with OCD and anxiety throughout college. So kind of going into anxiety. With anxiety, I had the feeling of wanting to throw up almost every morning for several consecutive mornings. This actually started back in high school. I just forgot to mention it in the previous video. There's so many things. I feel like I could write a book, honestly. Not that I'm certified by any means, because I'm definitely not, but I just feel like I went through a lot of struggles with, and I just have a lot to say. So as I mentioned, I had this feeling of wanting to throw up for several consecutive mornings. This definitely happened with the onset of whenever I was going through all of these issues, but it also did happen throughout college as well. I usually wouldn't actually throw up because it happened in the morning. Several mornings I would almost wake up in a panic because it was really frustrating. I'd finally get to sleep, but for whatever reason, especially if I was currently dealing with an issue with anxiety, I would wake up almost into panic and just my mind racing, my heart beating really fast, and almost wake up with a panic attack, for lack of a better way to describe it. So with that, I would get myself so worked up that I would feel like I had to throw up. Not throw up actually, because I didn't have food. Like, I know that this sounds gross, but I ended up just calling it a gag reflex, but it was mostly just like spit and stuff. I know that's really nasty, but it was just another thing that I struggled with having anxiety. I wasn't anorexic or bulimic. I wasn't forcing myself to throw up. I think bulimic is whenever you force yourself to throw up. I got off on a little sidetrack, but I would just like wake up in such a state of panic and feel overwhelmed and overly anxious. This would either happen whenever I was struggling with a specific thing with anxiety or OCD, but sometimes also and even now, I just get anxiety for no reason, for lack of a better way of explaining it. Like, I'm not anxious about anything in particular. I just have anxiety, and sometimes I do kind of wake up a little stressed out, unfortunately. Go back to my OCD. My OCD was at its worst during college. I'm not going to mention all of my compulsions because I might not remember them all. And honestly, I don't really want to go down that road of remembering them all because my OCD is pretty much like contained now. So I don't really want to think about all of the things that I had problems with and start going through those compulsions because it's really debilitating and not enjoyable. So one that kind of really stood out because it lasted throughout my entire college career, or most of my college career, was that with reading. So if I had a reading assignment or like assigned reading, that's pretty much the same thing, for class, I felt like I absolutely had to do that reading, but then I became obsessive about reading every word, which led to wondering if I did read every word in a paragraph, for example. So I would go back and reread that paragraph, which would then turn into, I wonder if I read this whole, like I skipped a word or something in a previous paragraph, so then I would go back and reread like an entire page. As you can kind of see, this was not a good one. This was so debilitating. It would take me forever to read. As you can see, this is not very healthy and it was very exhausting. Another thing that I mentioned in the previous video is just with mental disorders as well, a lot, because you're like so much in your head, it makes you physically drained because you're just getting yourself so worked up. Your mind is constantly wondering and racing and stuff, so it can be really exhausting. So this is obviously, like, that sounds really absurd, but unfortunately I struggled with that throughout most of my college career. But just to kind of give you also an example of OCD, like I said in the previous one, it's not necessarily having an immaculate house or cleaning for 8 hours a day or anything like that. It's just irrational things, but you feel like you have to perform the compulsion. The reading compulsion, as I mentioned, lasted most of college from what I can remember, so 4 years. As I mentioned, that book did help me with coping with it. This one, once again, will be linked in the description box down below. So it did help me with coping with some of my compulsions. Like I did overcome stepping on cracks and like following directions to a T, like with the microwave. Oh my goodness, I had so many weird compulsions. But for whatever reason, that one, the reading one in particular, was really hard for me to overcome. With me coping, you had to come to the point of almost, oh well, I tried. They talk about that in the book. I'm not sure if that makes sense, not those words exactly, but that's one of the takeaway messages. Basically, you kind of have to come to the point, I guess, I don't know, the takeaway is you at least tried. Like, so if I were actually actively trying to overcome the reading thing, like I would just have to tell myself like, oh well, I at least tried with reading, and if I didn't, like, like that. I'm not sure if that makes sense or not, but check out the book if you are struggling with OCD. So my freshman year was hard, and then my senior year of college was also really hard because I was taking a lot of classes and I wanted to graduate on time, and my classes were hard. So yeah, it was really hard. I was basically stressed out the entire time. I am glad that I finished and that I have a degree, but also I'm very glad that I'm no longer in school, because even the thought of going back gave me anxiety. I don't really struggle with that anymore too much because I just, at this point, like, I feel like getting a master's is not for me. or at least at this point in my life. So as I was saying, I'm glad that I finished and I have a degree, but I'm also very glad that I am no longer in school. If you guys are unfamiliar with me, after I graduated, I actually started taking prerequisite classes for a master's degree in speech language pathology, which I still love that field and have the utmost respect for the people in that field as well. I think it's very important, but my anxiety was so bad that I couldn't do it. Also, I feel like that was a sign that it wasn't meant to be. Another thing that I want to mention is there's a line between letting your anxiety rule you and you not doing things because it is better for your mental health in general. I knew I was going to finish my bachelor's degree. That was never a question, but grad school was not for me. Kind of want to get into that more also in the next video, because I can go on a whole separate tangent about that aspect of not letting your anxiety rule you, but also not doing things because it's better for your mental health. And I was so stressed out. I kind of mentioned that in I think it's in my What's My Life Purpose video. I think that's kind of where I talk about that a little bit. But once I made the decision of not going back, I just had this overwhelming sense of relief. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. So I knew it was the right decision. My anxiety was so bad, I could not do it. I only took prerequisite classes for the semester, and I did finish the semester. I made A's in both of my classes, but I was just so stressed, and I guess kind of with like following the rules and stuff like that, but I just became really obsessive and had really bad anxiety that I just personally could not go through with it. That is all that I have to mention in this video. Once again, I do want to share as well. I know it may sound like I'm being redundant, but it just is really important. If you are having problems with mental health, reach out to your doctor, also someone in your personal life. It's important. I think it's important to do both, because your doctor can obviously help, but also someone in your personal life, because they can be more of your go-to person. I know my parents really helped me throughout. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Also feel free to subscribe. As I mentioned, I am doing a series on mental health in general. This is part 2. Part 3 will be posted next Monday. So if you're excited for that, give it a thumbs up. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in my next video.